I can
Sure.
do something here. Just really more of a shameless plug than anything else. I'll probably be making a few of those while I'm on this stage. We just put out a report looking at 3 states and at the ways in which child care centers are regulated in those states and at the need for federal standard setting. I mean, the short story is that in many states, they're really virtually not regulated at all. And so one of the things we need to be thinking about in childcare and early childhood education is not just access, but also quality. And I think it's going to be in the quality part. There's a huge need for access, and I think that will actually get faster movement in the administration and in Congress. But there's also an enormous need to pay attention to quality and safety, just basic, fire exits and enough adults around and that kind of thing. In Alabama, for example, the state has over about 20 years given out exemptions for church-based child care centers. So if you literally now, if you put a church's letterhead, you write that you are a church and you have the letterhead to prove it, quote unquote, prove it, you can be pretty much exempted from inspections and from the licensing process, but still receive state subsidies. That is a trend, for example, that the state of Alabama would need to change, and that would be much easier to change if the federal government set not regulations, but a set of standards. So I think it's a really, really critical issue, very important to families, obviously. I think important to men as well as to women. And at ARC.org, if you go there, you'll see a report called Underserved, Underprotected. That's our contribution to that debate.
Well, so all right, Irasim is jumping in now, and you have to jump in, but you're next.
Well, I was just going to say that it is a family issue. Child care is a family issue, but somebody was talking about values, and I think that the question that the person asked was sort of like, why don't we deal with this particular issue as a society? We know that 49% of women are now in the workforce, so it's not the way it used to be 40 or 50 years ago. And so I think that that's really, as a society, is like where, there has to be a shift in values, because we don't, for whatever reason, as a society, have not placed a value on making sure that our kids have access, and not only access, but as Renku just said, good quality child care. And yet, we instead pay ball players millions and zillions of dollars, and that's really important, and but yet, our educational system or child care for our kids just doesn't hold the same value and interest from not just government, but society. So
it's a perfect segue to you, Alan, in terms of values. How do we bring about that shift?
Yeah, I mean, if I could build on what's been said a little bit, and I think this is actually a blind spot that you see with a lot of folks in the current administration. I'm also a big fan of them, and I actually think the president personally gets it in this respect. But there's a blind spot you see, and it's maybe best articulated by a way that disability rights activists often talk about it, that equal opportunity is not treating people identically, but treating them as equals. And there's an important difference there, and it's about respecting and addressing the differences that we bring to any given situation. So, expecting somebody who's in a wheelchair to go up the same courthouse steps as somebody who's not is treating them identically, but it's not treating them as equals. Expecting women, giving women equal access, identical access to a healthcare system that is designed to serve men is identical treatment, but it's not treating them as equals, it's not equal opportunity. And I think it's an idea that we see really beginning to seep into our policy. I think Family Medical Leave Act is a great example, and in upholding the act, the U.S. Supreme Court, including the late Chief Justice Rehnquist, actually understood that principle, that this is a question, that the FMLA is actually a question of addressing gender discrimination, not because it's about intentional discrimination and treating people not identically, but because it's about making sure that in our policies we treat everyone as equals and have policies that actually address them. Another kind of innovation and analysis from the disability rights movement is the idea of universal design. So if you go to any curb, to cross the street in New York City, you'll see that the curb goes down flat with the street. Now that is in part so that people in wheelchairs can have easy access to the street. But it's good if you're a delivery person. It's good if you have a bicycle. It's good if you're rollerblading. It's good if you're an elderly person with bad knees. It helps all of us. But it was designed with the notion that all people are equals. And I think it's actually up to us to really push the administration to better incorporate that principle. I've been at many meetings with them in which economists will say, well, we're closing the racial wealth gap because people of color are hardest hit in this economy, and the more jobs we create, the more we'll close the gap. That's just factually incorrect. And we know over history that looking at unemployment rates or some of the wealth statistics, good economy, bad economy has not determined the size of the gap. It's certainly true that rising tide can lift all boats, but it does not reduce the space between them. And so there are many, many people who just don't get that in this administration. I think in Barack Obama's Senate staff, for instance, you had people like Karen Kornblue who absolutely get this. Really smart folks who've been working on policy from that perspective. And I think we're going to have to push, and those of you who are researchers really make clear through data that, in fact, the fundamental presumption that these ideas are built upon is incorrect.